When I first met Daniel, I knew he was different. Not in the way movies usually describe love at first sight, with thunder crashing and hearts pounding, but in a much softer, quieter way. He was steady, kind, and had this presence that made you feel safe in his company. At that time, I was 26, still finding my footing in life, juggling a job at a publishing house, and living in a small apartment in Chicago. He worked as a civil engineer, his life marked by discipline and structure, which was a refreshing contrast to my own slightly chaotic personality. We met through a mutual friend at a small gathering. I remember him sitting at the edge of the living room couch, not loud like the others, but when he did speak, people listened. His humor was subtle but clever, and his eyes carried this warmth that drew you in. By the end of the night, we exchanged numbers, and soon after, we began dating. Our relationship unfolded gradually. We were not one of those couples who fell into instant passion. Ours was a slow build, made of shared meals, long walks near Lake Michigan, evenings of cooking pasta together, and learning each other's quirks. Daniel's steadiness grounded me. Where I was spontaneous, sometimes rash, he was deliberate and patient. He didn't mind when I painted my walls bright colors or rearranged furniture at midnight. He supported my dream of writing, even when it meant me spending weekends curled up with drafts that never seemed to end. When we eventually got married, our wedding was small and heartfelt, with close friends and family gathered under a canopy of twinkling lights. And that's when I began to really know not just Daniel, but the friends who had been part of his world long before I entered it. There was Michael, his best friend since college, who had the kind of personality that could light up any room. He was the storyteller, always ready with a joke or an anecdote that had everyone laughing. Then there was David, quieter, more introspective, who worked as a high school teacher and often spent conversations asking questions that dug deeper into people's lives. And finally, Chris, the most adventurous of them all, who was always planning camping trips, road trips, or any kind of challenge that could push everyone outside their comfort zone. At first, I was nervous around them. Being Daniel's wife meant stepping into this tight-knit group that had existed long before I came along. But surprisingly, they welcomed me with genuine warmth. Michael often joked that he had to share his best friend now, while David told me quietly that he was glad Daniel had found someone who balanced him out. Chris, in his energetic way, insisted that I join their next hiking trip, and before I knew it, I was scaling trails I never would have attempted otherwise. Over time, our home became a hub for their gatherings. Friday nights often meant poker games in our dining room, with pizza boxes stacked high and laughter echoing into the night. Sundays sometimes turned into barbecue afternoons in our backyard, where everyone pitched in, and the conversations flowed as easily as the iced tea. It wasn't just Daniel's friendships anymore, they had become mine as well. Of course, friendship is not always perfect. There were moments of tension, of misunderstandings that tested the bonds we shared. I remember one particular summer when Michael went through a difficult breakup. He showed up at our doorstep at midnight, disheveled and heartbroken. Daniel let him stay with us for weeks, and while I tried to be supportive, the intrusion of privacy wasn't easy. There were evenings when I longed for quiet with my husband, but Michael needed him more in those moments. It taught me patience and reminded me that love in all its forms, whether friendship or marriage, requires sacrifice. David, too, faced struggles when his father passed away unexpectedly. He retreated into silence, and for months, it felt like he was drifting away. Daniel spent hours on the phone with him, just listening. When David finally opened up, it was at our dinner table, tears spilling as he admitted he felt lost. That night reminded me how vital these connections were, not just for Daniel, but for all of us. Chris, on the other hand, challenged us in a different way. His restless spirit often clashed with Daniel's grounded nature. On one camping trip, a storm rolled in unexpectedly, and while Chris wanted to push forward, Daniel insisted on turning back. They argued for hours, voices raised against the sound of rain on the tent, until finally, they reached a compromise. Watching them, I realized that their friendship was like a marriage of its own. It required negotiation, understanding, and respect for differences. Through these years, I learned that my marriage wasn't just to Daniel, it was, in some way, to the life and people he cherished before me. And far from being a burden, it was a gift. These men weren't just his friends anymore, they became my friends, too. They were the ones who helped us move into our new house, who painted the nursery when I was pregnant with our first child, who showed up with casseroles and laughter when sleepless nights with a newborn left me exhausted. One memory that stands out most vividly is Daniel's 40th birthday. We decided to throw a surprise party, and his friends were all in on it. Michael organized the guest list, David wrote a heartfelt speech, and Chris somehow convinced a local band to play in our backyard. That night, as Daniel looked around at everyone who loved him, his eyes glistening with emotion, I realized the true depth of what we had built together. Marriage isn't just about two people, it's about the community that surrounds them, the friendships that lift them, and the love that extends far beyond the couple themselves. As the years passed, life took us in different directions. Michael got married and moved to California. David adopted a child with his partner and devoted much of his time to his new family. Chris eventually settled down, though not without first backpacking across Europe for a year. But even with distance, the bond remained. Every year, without fail, they all came back together, sometimes for Thanksgiving, sometimes just for a weekend getaway. And every time, it felt like nothing had changed. Now, as I look back, I see that my husband's friendships were never something I had to compete with or feel excluded from. Instead, they were part of the foundation of who he was, and by embracing them, I got to experience a fuller, richer love. Daniel wasn't just my husband, he was a friend, a confidant, a rock not only to me but to the people who mattered most to him. Our story is one of love, yes, but not just romantic love. It is about the power of friendship, about how the people who walk beside us shape who we are and who we become. It's about learning that marriage doesn't isolate you from the world but instead opens the door to deeper connections, if you let it. I often tell people that if you want to know who someone truly is, look at their friends. In Daniel's case, his friends reflected his loyalty, his kindness, and his generosity. And in welcoming me into their circle, they showed me the kind of love that extends beyond the vows of marriage. Even now, after decades of marriage, when we sit around a table with Michael, David, and Chris, gray hair showing, laughter still ringing out, I am reminded of just how extraordinary this journey has been. My husband and his friends didn't just give me companionship, they gave me family. And that, truly, is the most compelling love and friendship story of all.